sunshine, wild ones. It's Bernadette. I am here with your pick a card daily tarot reading for Tuesday, December 1st. It's officially the Yule and Christmas season. And because of today's card, da 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 da, you know you want this shirt. You know you do. So today's card is the Page of Sword. It is the cat. Now, you know, this is craziness, y'all. There have been like, what, 5 or 6 or 7 swords just in the last week and a couple of days. So again, I don't want to repeat yesterday's video because it was all about talking about what the swords and will really mean for you guys, since there's so many of them have come at one time, you know, in succession, back to back, day to day, and the big decisions you guys are making. But, you know, listen, everybody wants to be a cat because a cat's the only cat who knows where it's at. What song is that? What musical is it from? The Aristocats, Disney. Come on, y'all, get with the program. So I love this card because it is, you know, I hate to say it's a double-edged sword, because one of the big lessons of this past week has been swords and coins are not double-edged. They're actually triple-edged. There's, you know, the front, the back, and then the rim around the edge of a coin, or the sides around the edge of a sword. And so that really makes it a triple-edged sword or a triple-edged coin. And as I interpret it, you know, there's truth on one side, truth on the other side, and in the middle, there's the truth that only God or spirits know, or cats know. Now, one of the things that I want to say here is, before we kick off this, the rest of the reading, you know, I've had some people ask me, with the popularity of cats and the power of cats and the, you know, cats, why the cat actually chose to be the Page of Swords and not the King of Swords. Well, that's because the King of Swords is the condor, and that falls more in alignment with the traditional meaning of the King of Swords than cat does. The other thing is a lot of, you know, listen, so the lion is the strength card, right? It wanted to be the traditional tarot strength card, you know, as depicted in the traditional Rider-Waite tarot, which is what I read with my Arc Animal Tarot and Oracle deck, and the tarot portion of that is based on the Rider-Waite tarot. But, so of course, you know, lion had to be the strength card because it is in the traditional Rider-Waite tarot. But we did have a conversation, the lion and I, about whether it should be the King of Swords or not, after the cat came out as the Page of Swords. And what I had a conversation with the animal allies about is, as much as we love cats and as powerful as cats can be as teachers, as beings, because they can, even the tiniest kittens can teach us so much, at the end of the day, a cat is not a lion. A domestic cat is not a lion. And though they act like them, and they think they are them, and they have no fear, at the end of the day, they are not lions. And their pages in the, just, you know, briefly, pages in the tarot, pages are not kings. They're the embodiment of the more immature or younger version of a king. And, you know, remember, court cards, they reflect your present psychological state or perception of others. And, you know, if you're a little more experienced with tarot, you can start to see the complex interconnections, you know, between the cards that you pull for yourself, your family, your friends, or clients. But I love the pages because they're childlike and they bring so much joy. Whereas a king can often be really, you know, a little bit burdened with their responsibilities and the things that they have to accomplish and all the giving, whereas, you know, pages can bounce right in there and have a good time and leave and not have all the same responsibilities. Now, what's interesting is, remember, pages, they're part of the royal court. So they get to live in all the opulence, and they, you know, it's and all the riches and everything that are usually associated with a court. And that really is kind of like kids. You know, when we're kids, you know, we get to not have the responsibilities that our folks have for providing and doing this and getting us here and this and that. We can kind of wander the world and wonder at the world, and that's very cat-like. So just remember, there's something about the maturity level or the age that's going to be really important to you today, because Tuesday, remember, Tuesdays They're governed by the sacral chakra, and that's about the passion and the fire. And it's driven by Mars. Mars is the governing planet for today, which is a red planet. And the cat that wanted to be in the Arc Animal Tarot, because listen, don't think I didn't look at 9,000 jillion different cats. And ultimately, it was a ginger Maine Coon that wanted to be. So everything is falling into alignment today. The ginger orangey fiery color of the cat, the ginger orangey fiery color, reddish orange color of the sacral chakra, the red of Mars. It's all kind of in there. So today, a really deep red, or like a lighter red kind of going to the orangey tones, a fiery orange, any of that kind of those hues in that tone, that may become very important to you today. So all of that said, let's pounce right in there. And y'all forgive me, I got about 1.5 jillion cat puns I can use today. And let's talk about the Page of Swords. Now, like any kid, they want it right now, right now. And you've got your wish, you can have it right now. But you might be faced with a whole set of challenges when you jump, pounce right in there, that you might not have expected. Fortunately, cats almost always land on their feet. That really truly is a thing. It just depends on how high they're jumping and if they miss their mark. I mean, oh, God love them. You can see them on YouTube, all these cats trying to get to where they're going to go, and they miss the mark, and they go backwards, and then, oh my God, there's a cute little one. It's a little kitten, and it decides that it wants to jump on a countertop, and it says, doink, about 2 inches off the floor. And it's like, what? Wait a minute, I'm not on the counter. What? That's a page. That's a Page of Swords right there, right? Okay. So whenever you are taking a look at this card, understand that this is a call that you may not have mastered, or your client or whoever you're reading for may not have mastered the concepts and precepts, and probably don't have a great blueprint for where they want to go, but man, they're on their way. And that's half the battle, is being on your way, right? When you take a look at the mountains in the background of the Page of Swords, that's a symbol of the Page's wisdom, and they're blue. And that means, he's got knowledge, but it does lack practical experience. Okay, we'll all get there one day, right? Especially if we put our minds to it. And listen, when a cat wants something, they'll sit there for hours. Y'all, the other morning, I came out, I don't know, 2:30 in the morning to get some water. And I came around the corner, and I moved very quietly in my house because I don't ever want to freak the cats out and wake them up and send them flying. And so I moved very quietly in the house, and I came around the corner. I got 5 cats. Now, I used to have 9. Yes, I'm a crazy cat lady. And there they were, lined up, almost like with mathematical precision, in a crescent moon shape around my stove. Well, I took a look at them and thought, there's a lizard, there's a mouse, there's a roach, there's a something. So I got my water and went on about my merry business, because if I'd have started digging behind the stove and chased the thing out, the Fangoria family would have got him. And, there wasn't anything I could do. So I went back to bed, and I haven't had a crime scene in my house yet. So whatever it was must have skittered out someplace else. But, they weren't paying me any kind of bit of never mind, and they probably wouldn't have. They were focused. So realize that, when a kid wants something, again, it's a triple-edged sword. Man, they might want it with all the passion that only a child can have. And they might be headed toward it, and that might be a good thing. But their lack of experience might get them into big fat trouble. So just keep an eye on them, help them out. Now, part of this is that the Page of Swords, he or she wants to prove themselves. And the red boots symbolize passion and energy. The leggings and sleeves are yellow. And that means that that person is flexible enough, because remember, yellow is the color of the solar plexus chakra, and that's about your creativity. And you can't be creative if your mind is stodgy, and if you're in a mindset that you're not willing or capable of getting out of at that moment. So the color, just remember that yellow represents creativity, and that means flexibility also. The color yellow also symbolizes swiftness in thought, movement, and action. Because remember, that's a whirring disc. A whirring disc, it's always in motion. It's always in motion. And it's got a very solar kind of energy about it. So if he's looking over his shoulder, and he's holding his sword high, and he's on the lookout for any kind of challenge and ready to strike at any time. However, just like you can be overly confident because you can't know what you don't know, you can be underly confident, and you might be pulling this card because you might need some courage to take that next leap, to pounce on whatever it is that you want. And don't be overly cautious. And again, there are people that are, oh my God, they'll argue to the death that a page has got to be a man. I don't find that true. There are decks which, denote them as being female, or, princesses, or the princess, right? So whereas the king has a knight, the queen might have a princess, that kind of thing. I'll leave that up to you. Now, the Page of Swords can be a little bratty sometimes. He or she doesn't really mean any harm. It's kind of like cats. There's a whole Facebook page dedicated to, I think it's called My Cat is an A-hole. And it's just got video after video after video of cats taking Christmas trees down and for no apparent reason, knocking stuff off counters. There's about a jillion memes about it. Funny, but that represents the Page of Swords. So, listen, it's the experience of a child, and what are you going to do? They know what they know, and they don't know what they don't know. Now, let's be clear about something. When we pull tarot for ourselves, which I don't recommend, I don't find myself to be very successful at it, as much removed from the outcome as I try to be. How am I going to really remove myself from my outcome? I'm not sure I can do that, and other people swear by it, but I'm not sure they can either, right? But if you are flipping for yourself, and also understand when you are flipping cards for someone else, I truly believe that no matter how hollow of a bone you are, how pure your vessel is, and you're focused only on them, I don't think anything works in a vacuum. I feel like the clients and the cards that show up on the day they show up are meant to show up for you both. When I had an office outside of my home, and people used to come see me, I used to do this great experiment. Oh my God, I did it for years, and I'm telling you, it was about probably 90 to 95% accurate. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. I would shuffle the cards, I would clear their energy, I would shuffle them, after the last client, and then I'd pull one card that was intended for the client the next morning. And sure enough, that first client that would show up, that card would be the tip-off for their reading. Used to freak them out. And I used to have a lot of books in my office, tons and tons and tons of books. And there's a thing called bibliomancy that, a lot of people will get the phrases or the passages or whatever out of the Bible or out of whatever book, and they'll just flip to a page until they feel called to stop, and then they'll run their finger over it and they'll stop at the sentence or the paragraph. And I used to leave books on the client's chair all the time, and they'd walk in and they'd look at that book and they'd look at me and their faces would turn white and they'd go, "How did you know I was reading that?" And I was like, "Because I'm psychic and you're paying me for this, so aren't you hoping I'm accurate and I'm real and I'm, legitimate?" And they would laugh, but they would clutch that book the whole time they were in the reading. It was hilarious. Oh, I just loved it. Magic is so great. So here's the thing. The other thing is, the Page of Swords can be kind of a geek, which is cool. That means that they're very focused on things not of this world, but of this world. They're very focused on higher learning, and I just am always led to the geeky stuff, the inventions, that nature of thing. And when you take a look at the curiosity of a cat, they're curious about everything, and so is the Page of Swords. So just remember that sometimes the Page of Swords can be a little bit like Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang, maybe on the spectrum a little bit, but definitely doesn't get the social cues, is more in tune to the learning. That's really what they're concerned about. And cats, they just don't care about the social cues. They just don't care. Don't care what you think. They don't care what anybody else thinks. But they're very in tune to the world around them. Oh yes, they are. So remember that when you're marrying the energy, of cat as a spirit totem and power animal, and the energy and teachings and the symbolism of tarot. Okay, so when cats are very direct and they're very blunt, they're very blunt, as is the Page of Swords. It can often stymie social relationships. I know lots of people that just don't like cats, not for any other reason other than their attitude. They'd much rather have a dog because they want to be worshipped in every day in every way. And that's really what appeals to them more. They don't like that aloofness. They don't like the independence. They don't like the, no, you know, I, I got a cat, a diabetic cat, Glamouine. For years now, I've been giving him medicine every morning and every night, every morning and every night, it's time to, some people wake up, it's time to get the donuts, it's time to bake the donuts. And for me, cook the donuts, it's time for me to, get his insulin. It's time for me to get his insulin. I will call that cat and call that cat and call that cat. And it's my fault. He'll be sitting right in front of me up under the coffee table or out on the porch somewhere, and I'll look out and not see him or not see his tail sticking out. And I'm calling him, and he'll come when he's good and darn ready. So it's like a thing every morning, which is interesting. As a side note, I will tell you guys, take this for what it's worth, but it's become easier for me to think my cat's to me than it is for me to go hunting for him and call him. No joke. When I want Glamouine to come to me, and for real, like I want you to come right now and I don't want to play this game, I'll lay in bed and I will just think of him in my head. And I'm telling you, within minutes, he appears. Within minutes. It's crazy. And they all do. Except for the calico cat I have that hates me and everybody else in this world. She just is that poor malign thing. I've had her for 15 years, though. So think about that. Think about thinking things to you rather than going out and aggressively getting them, because you just never know when you might discover a little more advanced psychic ability that you have that you didn't even know that you had until you try it. And it might take a little bit because you've got to sync up with that. And for those, you've got to sync up with the energy of whatever it is that you're calling to you. And it has to agree to sync up with you, which of course my cats have and do. The other thing that I'll tell you is if you're an animal communicator, I get called all the time to please look for missing animals. I don't do that. And I don't do it because I'm very evidence-based. And if we can't get that evidence right then, right there, I feel like I'm taking somebody's money and giving them information that may or may not be true. Now, I do work on missing persons cases. That's a different story. But I don't do the missing animal thing, and here's why. I had a missing cat one time, and I called in the head of the Florida Canine Search and Rescue Unit, and she brought her German Shepherd in, and we were all over the place, and I was just in hysterics because I'm like, this cat is my familiar. Like, this cat is me, Simba, my tabby. And it was $500 to have this lady come in and look for this, bring her dog out and look for this cat. And finally, I was just in absolute hysterics. By the end of the day, I was like, I'm never reading for anybody else again. I'm a fraud. What the hell? What is going on here? I can't find my own cat. And she said, Bernadette, she said, I don't know really anything about all the psychic stuff. She said, but what I do know is when an animal doesn't want to be found, they pull their energy in, and they are masters of camouflage and disguise. She said, that's why a cat or dog can be sitting right in front of you. You don't see them. That's why all animals can hide. It's a survival technique. They just poof, disappear. And she said, from what I understand, the psychic thing, she said, because when you called, I looked you up on the internet to make sure I wasn't walking into some crazy lady's trap. She said, and I found you, and I was fascinated. I read about all the psychic stuff. She said, from what I understand, you're tracking energy like a bloodhound. I said, yes, that's exactly what I do. And that's crazy because that's how I describe it. And she said, that cat has just learned to pull in its energy. Long story short, found the cat the next day in the craziest way. But that was a big lesson to me about animal communication. So if you're doing animal communication, whether the animal is missing or it's somebody that wants you to communicate with their pet that's passed over or their pet that's here now, remember that animal's got to let its energy open to you. It's not the same as humans. Humans generally, have their energy open, and I'm going down a rabbit hole. That's a story for another video, but it does have to do with this because Swords are all about passions, and swords are all about accomplishing goals. And when the Page of Swords comes up, it's not nearly as ha 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 cut and dried as some of the other sword cards, because remember, there's an immaturity to it. There's a person who wants to be king. Oh, I just can't wait to be king. And we see how that worked out for him in some points, right? So you can be the king, you can be the queen, that's fine, but you got to get there first. Okay, so let's talk about, oh my God, how much time do you have? Let's talk about cat symbolism and meaning. Listen, there are some very obvious, one of my favorite things. Oh my God, is the joke that cats have never forgotten how the ancient Egyptians once worshipped them. And they still retain the rights to be worshipped. I just love those memes that go around. They are just the most Cats are just so full of mystery and folklore and legend and myths. And I wonder, of all the animals, where that's come from. But then you take a look at an animal and they're just the most independent, regal. I'm the shiz. I mean, there's a nobility, just a nobility about every kind of cat. And they know it. That's because that's who they are. And whenever I see cat come up in somebody's reading, I know it's time for you to consider your own nobility. And what that means is this. Noble means that you are duty bound to consider. If you accept nobility, cat energy into your life, you then become duty bound to consider how you lead your own life, because you then become a true leader in your own life. But as that evolves, it then becomes, what kind of a true leader are you going to set the example of being in other people's lives? I'll give you a case in point. I used to work in Hollywood, and I just recently had a situation where I employed someone's kid, said very gently and nicely to this kid, and they're not a kid, they're like 21 or something. Said very nicely to this kid, asked them some questions about a bill, this and that. It was a business question. I can't plan budget. I can't do what I need to do unless I have an understanding of how this person's billing works, because they're all independent contractors. This mom turned into one of the worst stage moms I've ever seen. And everything you ever read about stage moms, it's true, and then some. And then there are some people, really the better preponderance of them, that are just kind and lovely and just want to support their child. And they're really there to support their kid. They're not there to relive their own dreams, live vicariously, or worse, because it happens, use their kid as a meal ticket, because that happens all the time. So I had to decide at that point, well, how do I address this? And how do I be a good leader? And how do I do this and do that? And certainly it's always to be compassionate towards an understanding of people that just don't have an understanding at the level that you do. And that can sound very egotistical, but we're all different, and we all have different understandings at different levels about different things. And this person, in all fairness, has opened my eyes over the years to amazing wisdom and abilities and just things that I would never have gotten. But in that moment, this person really got down in the fray. They went to very lower levels. And, I just moved through it like a king or a queen would. And you're being called to do that now. You're being called to take a look at cats, because as playful as they are, when it comes down to the nitty gritty, they are noble animals, meaning they make the hard decisions, and they make no apologies about making the hard decisions and taking the hard actions. They make no apologies about that. They make no apologies in taking the time to get what it is that they want. They make no apologies for that. They don't hurry unless they want to. They don't slow down unless they want to. Basically, a cat doesn't do anything unless it wants to. Unless, of course, some stupid human is driving it, and that's, we don't need to talk about that. But again, the Page of Swords and the cat is such a huge omen that you're on the right track. You're for sure on the right track. But how do you get to the next level of your evolution? How do you get to that next thing? Now, the other thing is cleanliness. Cats are about the most fastidious animals on the planet. My God, they're like pigs. Just so you guys know, that whole thing about pigs wallowing in mud, yes, it's the same reason I like to go to a day spa and get a whole body mud pack when I'll be walking around in the excrement and the mud and I don't care if it is Dead Sea, blessed by angels, salted, anointed, whatever, bibbity bobbity boo mud. I only walk around with mud. Although some of the best days of my life are spent in the mud and muck on any kind of ranch or farm, or anybody's got critters, including myself. But pigs don't want to do that either, and neither do cats. So there's definitely a call when you see a cat come to you. It's time to clean up something. What do you need to clean up? Is it yourself? Because they do help clean others. Cats are very big about cleaning each other, and that's a show of affection and love. And you may be having to clean up a mess of somebody's. Parents have to do that with kids all the time. And I'm not talking about the living room or the bedroom or the kitchen. A kid will do something wrong, and you got to help them clean up the mess. Okay. But again, this card could represent you today. And remember, this is the daily reading. It's your reading. So my kitchen's a hot mess. I know I've, too many takeout containers. I got to clean it up. But it might be something you need to clean up about yourself, and maybe take a look at that. Now, different breeds of cats are going to mean different things. Black cats are the most feared. They're the most abused. What color cat is coming to you? Is it a tabby? Who doesn't love a tabby? What's the orange color? The ginger color? I keep hearing the word ginger over and over. And I bet you, again, that dime to a donut, I bet you there are a bunch of you out there that are researching ginger right now for its digestive and its autoimmune, inflammatory health and all that kind of thing. Just because I keep hearing, you guys wondered why I keep doing that. I keep having a taste of raw ginger in my mouth, which I love. But I'm like, what's raw ginger? Anyway, now the message has been delivered. The other thing is, if it's a Bengal cat, they've got ties to their country, and they're really wild and free and very tied to being adventure seekers. Manx cats, they're kooky. They kind of act like dogs. They're kind of cat-like. They kind of acts like dogs. And of course, the Sphinx cat, woo, ties to the ancient times, y'all. They just look, I would say, they look like pissed off oracles, because they do. They don't ever look happy about anything. And listen, if I was cold all the time, I wouldn't be either. But the other thing is, I want to go back to that whole story about finding my cat and the cat energy disappearing, the cat disappearing, because cats have huge ties, especially in the Wiccan witch culture. They have huge ties for being shapeshifters and being able to appear and disappear magically. And that makes very good sense. It comes from cat behavior. And when it comes to the vocalization of cats, that whole that chuffing, that chirping, that meowing, they'll tell you what they're thinking. And if you're an in-tune animal person, you're going to know. It's like when they start swiping that tail back and forth. Who doesn't know at that point they're irked and they're going to come for you? You keep poking them. You keep doing the things, but they also do that when they're about to go after something. Mine do it when they can't get to the squirrels, because I don't let them off the porch. I'm not trying to have squirrel and bird attrition in my neighborhood and be responsible for it. And I don't want attrition in my cat colony either, right? So my cats don't have, some of them don't have the sense God intended, the billy goat, but they're still regal. They're still noble, and they still think they're lions. But Mama Lion, Mama Bear's got to protect them from what they don't know, because they're children and they have the temperament of a 3 and 4 year old, on most days a 2-year-old. So there we go. When you have cats show up, there's so much to take into consideration, but mostly I find it's about worthiness. Cats don't ever second guess whether they're worthy or not. They just have a knowing that they are. And when it comes to magic, because they really are the most magical critters, I would encourage you to know that the overall lesson today is to know that you are a magical being. I mean, my God, you're made of stardust, right? And And you are worthy. You don't even need to think about it. There's no reason to think about it. Just that's it. You're done with whatever feelings of unworthiness you had. You can let them go for today. And if you find yourself a week from now falling back into that, you just grab some cat medicine and energy, cling to that page of swords, and you be an Aristocat. That's it. Maybe even go watch Disney's Aristocats, because it's about the funniest depiction of cats I've ever seen in my life. And the people who made that, they know cats. So I hope that's helpful for today. Pick up your copy of the Arc Animal Tarot and Oracle deck, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and as always, be noble about it, be aristocratic about it, but stay wild.